longer we wait, the more butterfly. Om Shtapakaya Chatarmasya Sarvatarma Swarupine Avatar Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Om Namah Shri Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya Namo Namaha. Om Agnir Murta Chakshusi Chandra Suryo Vishaha Shrotrivak Vivritasha Vedaha Vayu Hridaya Vishvamasha Padbayam Prativihi Sarvabhutantaratmam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Verily, that one cosmic being is the indwelling consciousness in all living things. Fire is its head, the sun and moon its two eyes. The revelation of Scripture is its cosmic mind. The universe is its heart, its arms and legs the four directions. Music is its voice, the wind is its breath, and from its feet the earth is originated. May it grant us all peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Meeting here in the afternoon in May, we have, is it still April? Thinking ahead to our May visit in 2 weeks. We have one more class after this one, next Sunday. So you may join us for the completion of the Advaita of the Avatars series, which will be 5 classes in all, about the length of our Jnana Matra series, which happened earlier in the year, that intelligent particle that we have to look into that's more subtle than the ethers, more subtle than the prana, more subtle than the mind, is this intellect or this intelligence. Intellect being a container and intelligence being that which infills it. Intelligence is the closest thing to consciousness we could possibly envision. So we look for realization, enlightenment they call it, then we look towards that intelligence to guide us. And that intelligence is being manifest in a marvelous way, in a very profound way, an extensive way, in the seers and saints and sages of India, and the saviors too, because the saviors are those avatars, as my teacher used to say, and I might as well start off the class saying it. In the West, we look to the divine incarnation as a savior, but on the Eastern horizon, the East looks at the avatar as an exemplar. So Christ himself, if you're looking to him for salvation, what they call salvation, then you might want to look a little deeper and a little higher, because he was a better exemplar, which is instanced in some of his sayings, like, be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven is perfect, and I and my Father are one, and so forth. He wanted you to do sadhana. He wanted you to know the cosmic process, the kingdoms of heaven are within. He wanted you to know that man does not live by bread alone, that there's another energy, call it prana or shakti, which India and its sages and seers are very well versed in, very much in knowledge of. In fact, they know it carries their thoughts. It carries this intelligence we were just talking about. So when you see a divine incarnation, you see a being who is in full possession of that intelligence. It's fully awakened consciousness. And we know, as my teacher used to say, in plants, consciousness is asleep, and in insects and animals, it's partly awake, and then in human beings, it's awake. But in a seer or a realized soul, it's fully awake, illumined, and is using all the marvelous powers of intelligence to effect highest benefit for all living beings. That's where the savior part comes in. But where the exemplar part comes in is where they act as an example for enlightenment, not just for gaining salvation, but for gaining what the Indian seers have been telling us for ages, called moksha, or mukti, or koivaya, or samadhi, or Buddha called it nirvana. Beautiful names and words that they assign to not only the seers that possess these great qualities, but the qualities themselves, if you want to call them qualities. Quite often, those samadhis, or those higher states of consciousness, take you beyond qualities, beyond virtue and vice, and pleasure and pain, beyond all dualities, and sometimes even beyond knowledge, because, as Krishna says in the Gita, his picture being so prominently placed here on our wall, talking to Arjuna on the battlefield, that you must come to know the end of knowledge in truth. So it's this truth that we were speaking about this morning at satsang, this non-dual truth, and how to affect it, how to actuate it, how to possess it and own it, how to express it and manifest it. In other words, if you look to Vivekananda as an exemplar, he would tell you that this great knowledge of Vedanta cannot be left in temples and books. In books and temples, vain thy search. And so if you're looking for someone to save you, how about his verse where he says, thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. So you're blaming every other thing, including God and devil out there, for your own problems, but you yourself are yanking yourself here and there around the world through these different experiences of pleasure and pain, life and death, if you look at it on a wider spectrum, reincarnation. They call it theory. I would call it a relative law. Reincarnation is more like a relative law. So then he follows that up by saying, then cease lament, let go of thy hold. So just let go of that rope that you're dragging yourself around with. And in another verses he would say, gold chain, iron chain. See, if you not only let go of snap the iron chain of immorality and evil and negativity and so forth, but you also have to snap the gold chain of good and virtue and morality and so forth. He wants you to go beyond both. Go beyond them both. Say, Om Tat Sat Om, as many of my students know who have memorized that particular poem that we're drawing from right now, the Song of the Sannyasin. We feel Christ was a sannyasin, Buddha was a sannyasin. These were beings who left home, house and home and family, and went out without any possessions, and in the search for God, and found each in their own tradition, although ironically the traditions that they were named after weren't in existence at the time they were living. There was no Christianity when Christ lived and so forth. So later on, people came with their understanding, quite often limited understanding, and tried to interpret the avatars in a way that their minds, at the level of their own understanding. And so some overlays got foisted on the original teaching. And we call that in Vedanta vivarta, false superimposition. And it's happening at an individual level, which would be the case of somebody who tried to interpret one of these great beings and did a poor job of it, or didn't do a full job of it. But false superimposition, vivarta, or adhyasa, is also happening on a cosmic level. That is, the very makeup of the world is Maya, they call it. And Maya is the worlds of name and form in time and space. And not just the external worlds they're talking about when they talk about the cosmos. They're talking about the kingdoms of heaven within too. All of these stations that we were talking about this morning in satsang inside of us. The ancestors are one, and the celestials are another, and lower and higher heavens, all the religions seem to agree on that. And then a realm inside of you that's consisting of gods and goddesses. This is where the deities are, in case you're confused about that. If you're trying to pit science against religion, or if you're trying to pit practical knowledge against deities, and the two aren't mixing somehow, then there is a way to see all of those comprehensively integrated and synthesized as they naturally are. Sahaja Tantra Siddhanta. You don't have to reconcile them. They're already reconciled. All you need to do is uncover them, which means you're going to have to strip away this vivarta, these false superimpositions. Your own, and those that are going around amidst your fellows, collective consciousness, which is humans, ancestors, celestials, and so forth, and then the cosmic superimposition, which is the very inception of name and form. Brahman reality being formless, you should probably try and be formless. If you want to be like your Father in heaven, then you can't act like a form. That you're cut in the image of divinity is a clue, but you're probably going to want to assume formlessness. It's a very high position. It's a different kind of asana that you're searching for when you leave the confines, the limited confines of Hatha Yoga, and go into the Jnana Yoga. You're trying to get your mind flexible now, not just your body. You're trying to get your mind healthy now, not your body. And lo and behold, you find out eventually that the mind can produce as many bodies, and has produced many bodies for you over time, and you've been assigning it to nature alone. That is the material cause, like the fetus, and coming about from the sperm and the ovum, and turning into a body and then dying at the end of life. Or, you've been assigning it to God, calling God a creator. But really this all has to do more with that hand that's holding the rope that's dragging you on, from lifetime to lifetime, or from concept to concept, or misconception to misconception, as the case may be. Hopefully from lower truth to higher truth, because that's what we chant here, right? Om Asato Ma Sadgamoya. May we go from lower truth to higher truth. They used to interpret that before Vivekananda came along as go from falsehood to truth. But Vivekananda said, no, there's nothing all false here. And guess what? There's nothing all true here either. You're in a world of mixtures and dualities. That's the way the world is made up. Otherwise, life couldn't go on. If our egos were pure, they would be non-existent. And so we wouldn't man the ego station. You see, we wouldn't assign our consciousness to an individual self. We'd always be assigning it to our supreme self, and everyone would be in samadhi, and there'd be no fun, you see. We wouldn't even be recognizing each other. I mean, Ramakrishna, speaking about avatars, and we'll go to this chart soon, he couldn't recognize his wife and his most cherished student when he would come out of the highest samadhi. He would look at them. Who are you again? Mm-hmm. So he had been out of the ego, out of his mind. There's one beautiful song in India, I could sing it, but I'll save that for later. Drive me completely out of my mind, O Mother of the Universe. So, completely out of my ego-mind complex. So they'd say, Ramakrishna would say, well, bring me some water. And so they'd bring him some water, and he would touch it. See, oh yes, now I'm in the realm of the 5 elements. Now I know where I am. So his mind would have to associate on the Bhutakasha. We were talking about the various akashas today. Paravasta had a nice question. And the Bhutakasha alone is what people believe in, this world of 5 elements. And if it hadn't have been for science, we wouldn't have even known what the world of 5 elements consists of. So quite often we say science is a better friend to Vedanta than modern theology is, which is trying to take concepts, religious concepts, and make them literal instead of taking them as symbolic. If you take Adam and Eve and seven-day creation theory and even original sin, as much as we like to hands off that, you can take them symbolically, then fine. You'll find a place for them in your philosophy, in your ideation process. But it's better to think in higher terms, beyond the dualities. So if you come out of this higher samadhi, then you're going to have to adjust a little bit to remembering names, remembering forms. It infers that this state of non-duality, which is Brahman, which is Almighty Father, takes away individuality and takes the consciousness into a completely homogeneous state, away from form. So, back to my point, the worlds of name and form are false superimpositions over reality. Now, some of the apostles of Christ had some very powerful things to say. One time one said, "No one has ever seen God." So that means with these eyes you cannot see God. And Ramakrishna would concur with that, but he would also say, but you can see God if you have subtle eyes, if your eye be single, because Christ also made that statement. So if he said, the way Ramakrishna put it was, you need love eyes, you need love ears, you need love senses, you see. They all have to be open to higher suggestion and infused with bhakti, with devotion, or with jnanam, highest intelligence. Or some beings approach it through meditation, formless meditation. That's pretty much a direct route, meditation, if you know what formlessness is, and if you have an inkling that Brahman is formless, then you're going to want to become formless yourself. And you're also asking yourself, well, I was formless last night in deep sleep, so there must be something to this formlessness idea that is beyond names and forms. Besides, my ancestors are problematic. My family, even my friends are problematic. My own ego is problematic to me. I can't even be friends with myself sometimes. So there must be some innate, inbred, as it were, imperfection with form. So if I am a perfectionist and I'm seeking it, then I'm going to have to look into this idea of formlessness. Well, that's what the avatars epitomize, really, is a doorway into formlessness through which they got the highest samadhi. And they usually went away from society to do that. Some went to the mountains, some went to the desert, some sat under a tree for a long time, some went to the wilderness. You look around, you find out, like Ram, whose birthday was yesterday, Ramchandra, he went on pilgrimage. First time out of his father's city, much like Buddha would do thousands of years, a couple thousand years later. Went away and saw suffering for the first time. When Buddha saw suffering the first time after he got out of his father's palace for the first time, he saw the four signs, the diseased man and the old age, man with old age, and the burning corpse on the funeral pyre. He saw these things for the first time, and it really sobered him. He said, "Oh, I didn't know about this. I thought the world was my oyster." You see, my father's acting that way. He's the king of the Sakya clan. My mother's acting that way. All the people around me are acting that way, as if the world is real, and they're embracing it. But what about this? Do I want to embrace this? Or should I just embrace it here and let it go? Which is why he came back from sitting under the Bo tree for so long and said, first noble truth, there is suffering. Let's get to that first. Because it's going to spoil our bliss later on. Our bliss will not be unalloyed and uninterrupted as long as suffering, the thorn of suffering, is on our side. So we better take care of that first. We better face off with that first. Then we can find out the cause for suffering, and then we can find out the solution for suffering. And guess what? Fourth noble truth is actually implementing the solution for suffering. Come to say, or find out, that some people find out the road out of suffering, but then they don't walk it. See, many impediments along that path, not just the usual gross ones, but some very subtle ones that turn people away from pursuing their own enlightenment. Do I have to say any more? Because How many of you are enlightened? Raise your hands. It'd be very hard to assign a term, samadhi or enlightenment, to yourself, right? So, well, then my next question would be, what are you waiting for? So, and that's not just a hypothetical question. I want you to really ask that to yourself. What are you waiting for? What is it that's keeping you here? My mother, when she was passing away and she was staying with me, I asked her several times while she was staying in the room where she was very old and she had MS and other things. So she was asked the question several times, and she said, interest in what my children are doing. That's basically what I got out of her. That I don't want to come back and do this again, but I have interest in what my children are doing. So that was kind of her reason. But one day when I had told her, because I was counseling her how to let go of the body and sleep, she didn't have to come back to it. And there was no fear involved in that. And so she said, one night she said, Babaji, I almost did it last night. I almost let go of the body. I was almost conscious of the ability to actually, as Vivekananda had said earlier, slough off the form, kick the frame, as he called it, you see. So it suggests, or maybe even infers very directly, that there is a consciousness watching the death process, which is probably what you're doing in dream state, because maybe you've had experiences of fear or suffering or death in dream, but then you wake up back in your body. Well, waking up in the other direction is much the same way. You wake up in consciousness, and then all dreams, dream number 1, the waking state, and dream number 2, the dreaming state, are both dreams then to you. And you're not going to return to them again, bereft of your consciousness. Should a man be reborn? They asked Swamiji. No, he said, not unless he can do so in full consciousness. So the idea there is, which is of the avatars, is that I come back only in pure consciousness, or not at all, thank you very much. If there's even a small false superimposition over a part of my consciousness, then I'm running the risk of falling into the allurements of the world and the net of Maya. Sri Ramakrishna, again, he said, there are 4 kinds of fish in the world. He's talking about people. One gets caught in the net, in the fisherman's net, and it is so deluded that it sinks itself in the mud at the bottom of the lake and thinks, I'm free, I'm free. Death can never find me. But it's got the net in its teeth. Another kind of fish is the one that, when the net is cast and it's caught, it runs around recklessly, bumping against other fish and into the net, and panics and dies in a state of panic. Then there's a third kind of fish that takes a chance, you see, and it actually goes towards the surface where death is. It goes towards death instead of away from death. And it goes toward the surface so that maybe it can find a way out of the net in the direction of the net. See? In other words, there's some sort of intuition, there's an opening up there. See? It's like the third eye opening, right? Have any of you seen it? I see it quite often. And I hear the sound when I was young. I hear the sound Om, even in my crib. You see, I remember hearing that sound, having it frighten me. My earliest postnatal experience is my mother coming in the door. Because I was crying out because I saw that vortex, inward vortex. So that third eye opens, clouds roll back, and it's just a perfect cylinder. You're looking inside, you're not looking outside, you're looking inside into a different kind of sun. It looks like a sun, this bright light, and if you look deeply into it, you can see distant lands, as it were, like island in the ocean. Jewel Island of Essence, they call that experience, the Jewel Island of Essence experience. So, the third kind of fish swims towards that and fails to make it. The fourth kind of fish makes it, jumps out and over the net, and the fisherman goes, "There goes a big one. Look at the one that got away," in other words, you see. Now he's got a big story to tell his friends. "Oh, there was a huge, large-mouthed bass that jumped the net," you see. That's what Sri Ramakrishna used to call Naren, large-mouthed bass. Actually, he even went so far as to say Naren actually never got caught in a net in the first place. So there is a fifth kind that he infers by that story. So analogies, metaphors, they're a way of explaining the inexplicable in spiritual life and give us a very definite inkling, a very intuitive kind of feel for the Jnana Yoga and for the truth that's there. Last week we looked at that in terms of 7 stages of knowledge and 7 stages of ignorance, called the Ajnana Bhumikas and the Jnana Bhumikas. Bhumika means a ground, kind of a land. Some of the Bhumikas are called sunken grounds because there's the hell realm, so they're called Bhumikas in Buddhism. But there's Ajnana Bhumikas, are the 7 realms of ignorance, in which the soul is graduating up and out of ignorance and then reaches a sort of awakening and encounters the Jnana Bhumikas, 7 stages of higher knowledge. We looked at that chart last week. If you weren't here, you can look back at it on the recorded live streaming. Or on this series of Avatar when we get it prepared for our website. We are putting all these things on our website, all these classes eventually, so keep looking for them. There's already a long list of some dozen of them that are available to see, and you can see them at your own leisure, and pause and so forth and come back to them. Because I know 3 hours is a long time to sit and listen to all of this, so and some things you want to concentrate on or listen to again, so those are available. So we looked at the Jnana Bhumikas and the Ajnana Bhumikas. And this week I want to take you towards that presence of the avatar more as a cosmic personality, because we've been looking at it more as a state of consciousness. And also the inspiration that such a being gives us to graduate, to move out of the gymnasium of the world, as Swami Vivekananda called it. Once you've got your muscles flexed, you can leave the gymnasium now, you're fine. So the avatars encourage us to do that. They want us to gain certain capacities that make a bridge, that start us out on a spiritual journey. And once that journey is initiated, they can almost leave you alone. So you just go toward the light. It's like pointing someone at the light. See that? Go towards it. And then you should be fine. Now there are certain impetuses that the avatar can use, and that's where this image here in this chart comes in. A little story about this chart is that I rescued it out of a dumpster because when an elderly Vedanta teacher in Honolulu named Mr. Morosi, Mr. and Mrs. Morosi, they taught 40 years there or so in Honolulu, and my wife and I, Loke, she and I went there and took care of the library books and helped them with their work in the later years. And so when he passed away, Vedanta Society of Honolulu was sort of left in the lurch. All of his papers and his notes that he had used for 40 years, I found out that they had been tossed. So I called one of the students in Honolulu and said, "When?" And they said, "Just the other day." "Where'd they go?" "In the dumpster in the back." "Can you go out and sort through the dumpster for me?" I told this old man, "You go out and just look through the dumpster." I could just imagine him out there and people looking at him like he was a street person or something as he sorted through all this stuff. But he came up with a bunch of Mr. Morosi's things and sent them to me in the mail. They were a little bit malodorous when they arrived, but I aired them out and found he was a sculptor, so he did drawings of the sculptors. Some of his sculptures are actually on Oahu and are still at public places. You can see them. And so I found this amongst those drawings that he had made. And it shows Sri Ramakrishna and some of his devotees. And I looked at it, and it really is from his life. If you read some of the marvelous books that Swami Chaitanananda from the St. Louis Vedanta Society has been putting out, like Ramakrishna as we saw him and other books like that. Then they lived with God, God lived with them, those are two others. And then you'll find out that a lot of work has been done looking into the life of this most recent avatar, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And in those books you'll read of these inner circle, not only the direct monastic disciples, but a whole householder circle that gathered around Sri Ramakrishna when he was living in Calcutta, when he was the priest at Dakaneshwar Kali temple, and took teachings from him, took transmissions from him. And of course the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is one of the great testaments for that. A spiritual book everyone should read at least once in their life. So in those books you'll find out that he had some 16 direct disciples, and they were being put into different states of consciousness sometimes by him, just by proximity. There are stories of one or two of them having bad meditations. So Sri Ramakrishna would say, think about me at such and such a time, day after tomorrow when you meditate. And then they would feel Sri Ramakrishna's presence at that time, and he'd remove the obstacle and they could meditate. So that's a kind of diksha, it's a kind of touch. It doesn't just happen with a hand, hasta diksha it's called, on the head or on the heart. Because he did that to Naren. This is evidently Naren here on the far right, your far right, being touched and given hasta diksha right there on the third eye. And he did that early on to Naren and put him in a high state, and Naren told him why he had come to earth. And he was just probably in his late teens at the time. So there is this power in an avatar to awaken us. Now, yes, you're probably thinking Shaktipat. Shaktipat in the West in this particular time been greatly misused and misunderstood. Usually these great beings will not use that kind of power on you. They'll use some other forms of diksha. For instance, mantra diksha. Mantra diksha is probably the best of all because it leaves your awakening in your own hands, and that's what they want really. If they were to awaken you prematurely or awaken you by grace, as we looked at that last week, remember, they're Kripa Siddha, Swapna Siddha, Hatat Siddha, and those kinds of siddhas, perfections you get in a dream, or perfection you get through the grace of a being. Those happen to practitioners at various stages of their practice, but the mantra diksha is one of these ways in which they will invest a sincere devotee with the word. The bijam, which is a seed word, plus a name of a deity put together is a very powerful thing. As we were saying this morning, you can concentrate on one thing, and as long as you're concentrating on that one thing, everything that's bothering you goes away. Get thee behind me. So if I can take the mantra and just keep it in my mind, I'm probably in pretty good shape, you see. Even the parrot is in pretty good shape when he repeats the mantra until the cat comes around. That's death. And then it squawks its own primal squawk and falls into the jaws of death. But so it didn't really take the mantra very deep. But nonetheless, even if you haven't received mantra diksha from a teacher who has practiced the mantra for years and has gotten it from another teacher who has practiced it for lifetimes and has come down to you in succession through what's called Guru Parampara, then even repeating the mantra out of a book will help you in a little bit, as Holy Mother said. But what you really want to do is get mantra diksha and begin to unwrap those words inside of your consciousness. Now this is where it all dovetails nicely into the word, or into the jnana matra, the intelligent particle, because we're to think that if you can split an atom and release a huge external power, then if you got a hold of one of these internal atoms called jnana matra, I mean, these are 1,000-year-old words. It's nothing new. These have been known by the seers for millennia. Jnana matra, a particle of wisdom. So if you can get this and split it with your own electron microscope called your third eye, with your attention, then it will release a great power inwardly. Explosion from physical matter, implosion from subtle matter, or from subtle words. So this unwrapping of the mantra practice is very, very deep. People can stay on the surface of meditation for decades. They can stay on the surface of mantra practice for decades. There are thieves in the night. They go to the teacher and they get a mantra, and then they run away with it and they don't practice it, or maybe they don't practice it for decades, or they don't practice it till another lifetime. It's sort of a germ that's been planted, and it'll attract them later to something, to some time that's more auspicious. But the best of all, as Holy Mother said, some people, they go to the Jagannath temple and they start on the path and they don't reach there till 6 o'clock at night, and they get fed. Other people reach there at 8, and the temple still feeds them. Other people, late, don't get there till midnight, but the temple still feeds them at midnight. So she says all beings will get fed, which is the marvelous message of Vedanta, that all beings will get enlightenment. Because enlightenment is their true nature, they will awaken to it at some point. But if you want to be actively engaged in the enlightenment process, via sadhana, for instance. Sadhana siddha was one of the items on the chart last week, right? We saw those people who get perfected through sadhana. Well, the seers like that kind of person very much. And they would like it if you came and they gave you the mantra, and you would go into samadhi right there on the spot. They just whisper it in your ear, see. And you'd say, I remember that, and you're taken away from external consciousness, and you have this whole inner atmosphere open to you. Whether it's this chakra or this chakra or this chakra, it opens to you. And you have a powerful experience. And you may come back to the body and forget that experience, or partially forget it, or you may come back in full remembrance of it and say, I'm going to storm that gate again as soon as I can. I can hardly wait to sit tomorrow morning to see if I can open that on my own auspice, under my own power, see, without the teacher's touch, without anything. So once you get that glimpse, as I was saying this morning, then you're hooked. It's different than being a fish caught in a net. You're a fish hooked by the truth. You're going to get yanked out of the water of worldliness and into the light, sunlight of realization, you see. It's a different direction you're going. Spiritual life is a different direction than worldly life. It's unique unto itself. Its fruits are different than the fruits you get in the world. They're very subtle. So these are some examples of what that word called diksha. It's really initiation, as you might say. It's a way in which beings take a commitment into the path. And sometimes it's, as Holy Mother said, sometimes you get in to the cold water a little at a time. You just stick your foot in, drop back, and then you get your knee wet, and finally you get your thighs wet. And like people walking in the ocean, they don't want to get this part of themselves wet, right? They've gotten this far, but they can't take that final dive into the ocean. They're partially immersed, you see. But to take that final jump into the cold water, there's a little trepidation there. So just like that in spiritual life, she says, sometimes people get in very carefully, or some great souls dive in all at once. They just get it over with. Or some souls, usually the foolish ones, get pushed from behind by a mischievous friend. Ha you see. So whatever the case, you'll get wet, you see. So she means all beings will reach that pinnacle, or that time, that auspicious time. Auspicious timing is one of the precious teachings of the Dharma. It's an unfigurable formula, what awakens some people and why others who are poised on the brink of awakening will not do so. If we, teachers, gurus, acharyas, rishis, knew what it was that formed the concept or the principle of auspicious timing, well, we'd bottle it and become rich. Mm-hmm. But we don't. In fact, that's the hands-off portion. That's the portion that belongs to the Divine Mother. And we're just her sons and daughters, see. So if we're invested with the mantra and we practice it and we qualify ourselves in mantra practice and we know what the word means, A-U-M, we know that each one of those is a particle. A is Brahma, U is Vishnu, U is Vishnu, and M is Shiva. or A is the waking state, U is the dreaming state, M is the deep sleep state. And you begin to put those together, and you've split each matra with your own attention span, with your own deep concentration, and this implosion has happened, and the light of knowledge is now lighting up the inner periphery of your life, and you can't think of anything else but that. Then you can go and transmit that mantra to others. I wouldn't advise doing it otherwise. Like people are doing it here on the beach in Hawaii now. See, going to some beach kirtan or something. He says, "What do you do?" "I'm a businessman." "Do you want diksha?" "Sure." "Here, I'll give you initiation." You see, so they do some sort of sleight of hand. You see, and the person gets some diksha from a businessman. See, not from a seer, not from a teacher. So it's a mixed transmission, and mixed results come from it. You'll probably go into business soon thereafter. And enlightenment will be forgotten. Your search for enlightenment gone, you see. You maybe had a little bit of it and you just misdirected it. So people ask me that all the time, can I get a mantra from a book? Well, yes, you can, and you can repeat it, and it'll help you a little. But it's nowhere near what you are going to need for the spiritual path to gain full realization of who you are, your true nature, Atman, Buddha nature. Pragyaparam, Tathagata Garbha, the essence of consciousness, timeless, deathless awareness, pure conscious awareness. That's formless. And who approaches it with any consciousness? Very few rare beings. So, if you come into the periphery of an avatar, and what I mean by that is any time within the 500 years that an avatar has been born is a good time to become aware of an avatar, not just in the same lifetime. That's a good thing, to be born at the same lifetime when an avatar is in the body. That's called Sayujya. And if you get Sayujya, then you get Sarupya, you get the same form. And if you get Sarupya, you get Samipya, you become very dear to the avatar. And if you get that, you get Salokya, same atmosphere. You're in the same periphery with the avatar in the same lifetime. Well, there's advantages to coming after that great steamship has already passed. You see, and all of these great waves are coming off of it. There's a story of one of the direct disciples whose student came to him, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Student came and said, "You're so fortunate, you got to see Sri Ramakrishna in the flesh." And so it's obvious that, you saw God. There was no denying it. And the direct disciple turned to him and said, "Actually, you're more fortunate than I am, because you never saw him, but yet you still believe in him." So yes, you cannot deny it when it's right there in your face. If you're invested with any sort of spiritual understanding. If you're antagonistic to the light, then of course you'll deny. Many people denied the Christ and so forth. But of those people who are gravitating towards enlightenment, they will recognize right away. They will know. So there are advantages to being born after the avatars come. And besides, one of the signs of an avatar is that he or she will leave behind a series of disciples. 16, 12, 8, 30, 28 in Shankara's case. So, and these great beings are combinations of Gyanis and Bhaktas and meditators. You see, they all are different temperaments. And so they call those windows into the avatars. Windows, you see. Lighted windows. You can see what the avatar was like by talking to one of them, which is what these books I just mentioned are about. So another way of looking at the avatars, these marvelous powers they have, which are different than occult powers. See, I'll probably show that later, but there are these ways of viewing powers. The word is siddha. So there are the 8 occult powers, which most of the teachers warn you away from. And then there are the 6 great divine powers, which are manifested by the avatars. 6 divine powers. I'll show you that in a minute. So, in order to recognize these offerings that are coming off of a guru, I took this image, and the stories from the tradition, and some of these direct disciples, who are most of them quite young. There were a few older ones amongst them, like M, the author of the Gospel, was there, Mahendranath Gupta. And showed it in this way. By studying the scriptures, I found out all these different kinds of dikshas that are mentioned there. Sankalpa diksha, chakshu diksha, hasta diksha, vak diksha, sparsha diksha, dhyan diksha, mantra diksha, swapna diksha, shaktipat diksha, and pada diksha. These are others down there you see have been, in that list, have been spread around according to the activity that each of these devotees is engaged in, like that one who has fallen into a swoon here, getting swapna diksha. That is getting transmission in a dream. Now there's a story in Ramakrishna's life of an old man who was always there on the front porch waiting for Ramakrishna to come when he came to the city to give darshan at one of the devotees' houses. And he was always there waiting for the master. He saluted the master, touched his feet. That's pada diksha, by the way. And then master went inside to give the teachings and sing the songs. And the man would stay on the porch and waiting for it to begin, and then he'd always fall asleep. And then when Ramakrishna was coming out, hours later, the man would wake up and say, "Oh, I missed it all." And this would happen again and again and again, that he would miss these because of sleep. And so Sri Ramakrishna finally told him, "Don't worry, you're getting it all in sleep. You're getting a transmission in sleep. You're one of my devotees." So Swapna Diksha might not be a conscious reckoning of everything that's going on right in the moment, as some of the devotees in attendance are getting, but nevertheless, it's a subtle transmission. So he's lying there, as it were, in a swoon, or in sleep, and the master's moving about, protecting him. Now there's one getting Dhyan Diksha. You can see the person meditating over here. See, so he's getting Dhyan Diksha. Dhyan means meditation. So it's a very powerful way of getting a transmission from an avatar, is to meditate on them. In fact, that's really our path here in SRV. But we're told to meditate both with form and beyond form by our teachers in Vedanta. So we hold 2 ideals at the same time. We don't just try and jump the form and just go transcend it. Neither do we just stick with the form and know nothing about formlessness. Our teachers say, let's put these 2 together, you see. And therefore, meditate on an ideal, choose an ideal, like Krishna or Ram or Kali or whatever, or an avatar, and keep that envisioned in your heart and in your mind's eye. Build a temple in your heart, enshrine the image on that, and meditate with it every day. Now, some of my Hindu students say, yes, I managed to see the knees yesterday. So I know what they're talking about, is because they start with the feet, and when they envision the feet, they plant that in the shrine. And that might take weeks. I can see the feet all the time now. Then they build the legs, the shin bones, and the knees, and pretty soon they can keep that together in their mind's eye. Then they build the hips and the waist and the neck, and pretty soon they add the head and the face. And eventually they've created an image made of consciousness in their minds of the Ishtam. And that's a fructification process of meditation on God with form. So, and there are other ways of doing it too. Some people have greater powers of inner vision, so they can accomplish that no problem. And then it's just a matter of assigning the teachings to the place. The prana to the akasha, if you want to put it that way. You have the akasha now, but where's the energy that connects to it? So all of that is a kind of explanation of Dhyan Diksha. See, you're creating a space of consciousness and giving yourself access to it. You're giving yourselves the keys to the kingdom, basically. Whereas before you've been denying yourself the keys to the kingdom. Nobody else has been doing that for you. You've been doing that. Nobody's standing in your way. Sometimes we compare the ego to a huge balloon that you blow up inside a room, inside an empty room, you see. Nobody can get in, but it's all space inside. That membrane keeps you out. So the bigger the ego, the more it shuts out. And if you can deflate that, the more you can get in, the more light can come in. So Dhyan Diksha has that other great quality of being able to dissolve the ego, which is one of the false superimpositions over Brahman, one of the subtlest. Look at a few others here. Sparsha Diksha, I mentioned Ramakrishna gave Naren Sparsha Diksha, a touch. He gave him a touch. And he did that on several occasions, and he did that at different parts of the body. He could lay a hand on your head, and that would be, might as well say it now, it would be Hasta Diksha. You see if it's in this list. By hand on the head. But it can also be in the third eye, and also be in the heart, touching the heart. Depending on what level of consciousness is being shown. It's very possible that on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when chapter 12, Vishvarupa Darshanam, that when Krishna wanted to show Arjuna the vision of the cosmic form, that he touched him on the heart, and he saw the cosmic form. Instead of the war there, he saw the devourer of war. See? Elephants, armies, horses, men, everything was disappearing into these 1,000 mouths of the cosmic form. It was eating it. Rivers of blood were flowing into it. So he had this horrific vision of God with form that was even beyond the kind of scene that you would see in a battle. Some of you have seen depictions of war in movies and so forth. Even much more stupendous than that. And Arjuna's reaction to this Hasta Diksha was, take that vision away, please. Show me your two-armed form again. I don't want to see the 1,000-armed form, the 1,000 legs, the 1,000 mouths, the 1,000 eyes. Those horrible mouths, take it away. You see. And just show me your gentle form again. Because by this time he knew Krishna was no ordinary being. Because he could touch him and give him this vision, then he must be an avatar. And prior to that, Arjuna probably didn't know who he was dealing with. Because not long after that he said, please forgive me, Lord, for calling you friend, for taking such license with our relationship. I didn't know who you were. It's really very symbolic of us not knowing who we are. Man and wife not knowing who they are, though they live with each other for decades. Brother and sister not knowing who they are. One person getting awakening spiritually, and the rest of the family going, we know nothing about that. They're just our daughter or our sister, you see. So they don't know the transformation that's taking place inside. So that's going to take some transcendence of barriers that society, people, egos, relationships, and other things throw up all the time. And that people begin to live by these conventional ways. They don't dare trespass, you see. Well, the seer could care less for those boundaries. In fact, even in religions, he's going to strike those down. Ramakrishna used to say to Naren, those two, when they were talking together, he'd say, and Vivekananda said it later, my teacher used to say that Christianity, words like Christianity and Hinduism and Mohammedanism were barriers to enlightenment. Those words were barriers to enlightenment. And of course, he qualified that statement later. He said, we want to be able to see the divine being beyond the Quran beyond the Bible, beyond the Vedas, but we must do it by studying the Quran, studying the Bible, and studying the Vedas, is how he put it, paraphrasing him. So it isn't that you chuck the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. It's that you look very deeply into all of these ways so that you come to know them, because knowledge is the destruction of fear. Ignorance is a type of fear, that you don't know the other person, so you have some fear of them. So husbands and wives are walking around on eggshells in the same house, you see, either not trying to offend each other or offending each other on purpose. But they're not seeing the Shiva and Shakti that's standing behind the scenes, behind these false superimpositions. They're not seeing each other as a divine couple. Seeing would mean there's the Atman, here's the Atman, and there's no bones about it. See? I see the one standing behind the many. If you can do it with one relationship, then you can start practicing it with humanity, or with the ancestors, or with the celestials, or with the rishis, especially with your guru. Holy Mother used to say, if you think of a guru as an ordinary person, no matter how many faults you might think he or she has, then you'll never make spiritual progress. If you choose a guru, that guru is God to you. And you do what they say. I never missed one opportunity to hear my teacher speak, and I never fell asleep or lost my attention span ever in his lectures. I was sitting still, focusing on him, and I never disobeyed him. I believed everything he told me, without exception. That's the way to make spiritual progress. I never argued with him, well, maybe once, right at the very beginning. And he put me straight. I had a few little issues about other teachers, see. And I won't mention any names, but he finally told me, what can I tell you? I've given my whole life to Sri Ramakrishna. Come and I'll show you how to give your whole life to Ramakrishna. Forget these other teachers. Oh, no wild fox Zen. You see, Roshis will tell you, no wild fox Zen. One Roshi, don't mix it up. All these Roshis out there may have a certain form of enlightenment, and they've reached their enlightenment through different paths, but you'll get confused by mixing them up. Take one, find out what the essence is, dig one deep well, strike water, then move about as you like. So there are certain rules of thumb, see, certain rules of thumb in Vedanta and in spiritual life that we hold sacrosanct because we want to make sure of our realization. We have a chance now, don't we? We know the truth, we've heard the truth, we believe in it, we have faith. This is our opportunity, because who knows when that auspicious timing will go away. Auspicious timing could be a day, it could be a month, it could be a series of a couple years, it could be a 12-year cycle. Then all of a sudden, I'm up a creek without a paddle and I don't know what's happening anymore. I've seen it happen all the time. It happens to good people and bad people alike. Bad people come to the truth, run away from it. Good people come to the truth, forget it. Good and bad are dualities. They're the iron and gold chain you're trying to snap. So in these different transmissions we're talking about, these teachings come up in that context. What else is there we can see? Sankalpa Diksha. There's a form of Sankalpa that Krishna tells Arjuna on the battlefield, where he says, it's a form of evil, Arjuna, give it up. In other words, mental imaginations, mental fantasies, mental projections. These are the warp and woof of false superimposition. That is, if you're the hand that's holding the rope that drags thee on, then most of these false superimpositions that you're suffering from out there have been foisted on it by you, or you in other forms. People are just other forms of you. So individual or collective delusion, it's all mass collective mental dreaming, isn't it? And when you get a mass of people together, it's a very powerful dream. It's a dream they think is reality. The ancestors are having one of them. The angels are having another. Humans are having another. The animals are having another. I think the animals are looking out of their eyes and thinking, oh, there's the world of the humans, you see. They're just in their own animal world, and they just want to eat the green. As my mother-in-law says, eat the green. Even dogs eat the green. I've seen them doing it. So these worlds, you see, very figured, dreams held with boundaries that people aren't going to move outside of. But what you want is a world that has a boundary around it that is being held up by the avatar. That's a huge field, you see. You'll never find the end of that. It's boundaryless. I have brought you to the circle of Sri Ramakrishna, she said. You cannot go anywhere beyond it now. Once you've taken refuge, taken the mantra diksha with Holy Mother, as my teacher did, and then he passed it on to me, then you fall into that auspice. You say, I have come to the field of Ramakrishna. I cannot go anywhere outside of it. He's everywhere and in everything. He represents Brahman. He's had form of samadhi, so he can do that. I'm still searching for form of samadhi, so I need to get to the Father through the Son. I need to have friends in high places. I don't burn bridges, not in this land. Every thing I can have at my disposal, every weapon, every benefit, even every crutch, I'll take it. See, if I'm limping, I'll take a crutch, see, to get me to my goal. Gatam, paragatam. I want to get to the goal, to the supreme goal beyond all relative goals. Because then all relative goals will just be bliss, you see. I'll have understanding. I'll have khyati, clarity. That's what I want, clarity, you see. So sankalpa diksha, by thought or by will, the avatar has a form of sankalpa to introduce to you. Sankalpa usually is this dream held by ancestors or by humans and so forth, with all its various overlays, misconceptions, mixtures of things. But the avatar has a sankalpa or vikalpa way of dealing with you, that even by thought or will, he can awaken you up to the truth. He doesn't have to be in your proximity. You don't have to be in his. You don't even have to be in the same lifetime as him. If he thinks of you, then you get diksha. And therefore, the best way to have him think of you is to start thinking of him. I mean, if somebody were looking away right now and I'd say, Cindy, and she looked at me, you see, she was looking at the chart. She wasn't sleeping. She was looking at the chart. I said, Cindy, and she immediately looked at me. So if you think about God, he immediately will look at you. Not the formless Brahman, because he doesn't have eyes, but the mother of the universe will look at you, the Shakti power. That's why we call upon her. She's the Vakdevi. See? Vakdevi, here's Vakdiksha. By a word or an utterance, one can get awakened. Now, does that mean immediately? In the case of a person who's supremely qualified and ready, yes, it means immediately. There have been cases of that on record that the rishis have written down in the Vedas and the Upanishads, of being so ready to hear that word that when they heard it, it was like that, lightning struck. That doesn't mean that they had many lifetimes of preparing for that either, for that immediate moment. But if you were to see a person at a different level of that race for enlightenment, you would see a person who is beginning to qualify themselves, and if the mantra were given to them in that stage, they would be unwrapping it by stages. Tripura Sundari. The most beautiful gift was given to me in 3 parts. The mantra that the teacher gave me, my own contemplation of it in my own mind, and the unwrapping of it that ended in enlightenment. That's the 3-part. It's a name for the goddess, Tripura Sundari. So when you're given that precious mantra, then you unwrap it. And when you're engaged in that, then it's just a matter of time before you will understand, with an understanding that is beyond the intellect, a peace that is beyond all understanding, the meaning, the real meaning of things, and a word can do it for you. Sometimes a person can do it for you, you see. the very presence of the avatar. Other times just one of his words will do it to you, or one of her words will do it to you. Whatever the case may be, people have been getting enlightened by these methods from time out of mind. Puja could do it for you. Worship. People have gotten enlightenment doing worship. External worship. All of a sudden, doing puja for 40 years, poof, all of a sudden the deity came through the image. I saw it. Holy Mother used to say, when I offered the food to Ramakrishna, this was long after he had passed, then I would see a light come out of the picture, out of his eyes, and touch the food, and then I knew it was fit to offer to the devotees, and I would take it out and serve them. So she was so deep into seeing the light in everything that the light in the image was no different than the light in the being itself. And she would see it taking place, a physical manifestation of it. That's Sankalpa Diksha. Ramakrishna could make her see the light of everything. I mean, he himself said about his own picture when he first saw it, this will be worshipped by hundreds and thousands of people in the future. Imagine saying that about your own picture when you were still living. And it was very possible that he didn't recognize himself, because he didn't have a mirror and so forth. Probably saw himself reflected in the water. But when he saw that picture, photography was a very young science. So it wasn't like you were looking at photo albums all day on your divan or something with a cup of tea. You never saw a picture before. So when Holy Mother got this picture from the Muslim priest who loved Sri Ramakrishna, who worked in the Kali temple, or in the Dakshineshwar temple compound, and then when Ramakrishna saw this picture, he said, that shows a man in a very high state of samadhi. That's the first thing he said about it. He didn't say, that shows me in a very high state of samadhi. So whatever the case may be, these dikshas are very profound ways of understanding the avatar and also of opening yourself up to the gift of a divine being. It doesn't matter if he's passed for 2,000 years or 2,500 years or just 150 years like Swamiji. It doesn't matter. It's still there, very much in force, very much in power. And in fact, the teachings are there the same way as they were millennia ago. The same teachings are there. That's what the most ancient scriptures of the world, like the Rig Veda, really mean to us, really, beyond time, right? If they meant the same thing to the rishis, and they got the rishis illumined, and the rishis wrote down their experiences of spiritual life, then it's the same wisdom then as it is today. See? And we might as well be sitting 10,000 years ago with the rishis right now. It's just like we did. And here some of us look like Christ, and some of us look like Buddha, and some of us look like Krishna. We all show the features of the avatars on our very countenance. It's a spiritual physiognomy. You can sort of see where people have been. Whether they've been on the Mount, hearing the Sermon on the Mount, or whether they went into the forest or in the wilderness. So, forms of Diksha are also then ways of pricking our subtle memory, our Smriti Bedu, this causal memory of back inside of us of other lifetimes, and having met these great souls. It's why we have an attraction to them in this particular lifetime. Many stories of people, when Swami Vivekananda made a big splash at the Parliament of Religions, then posters started showing up in the streets of New York and other places, and there are many stories of people just seeing the poster and saying, that's him. I don't know his name, I never knew who he was, I've never met him, but that's him, I'm going to the class. And they became devotees, Vedantists. Occasionally I'll meet a woman or a man in their 30s or 40s, say, my grandmother was a Vedantist. Yeah, way back when. Some of the early times before many of us were gathered. Not that there are that many of us gathering even yet today, in America at least. But yes, people had heard the Vedas and the Upanishads, and they were relating to them. I know an older woman named Veda. She's a Christian, but her parents named her Veda. Well, the only thing to finish up about Sankalpa Diksha is that Sankalpa means a mental projection. So most mental projections, very mundane, very mixed, sometimes evil, and sometimes very worldly and very bound up in the ego. But Avatars Sankalpa is Atmic Sankalpa, not Mayic Sankalpa. We had a chart on that recently, the difference between the two. So the avatar is engaging in Atmic Sankalpa, comes out of the Brahman through the aperture of the third eye, hears the word, enters the realm of the word, sees the opening to the out of the word and into the word, because the word is both expressing form and dissolving form, and it can go both ways. For those souls who are reaching enlightenment, they're dissolving everything. For those souls who are entering the worlds of name and form, they're going the other way, out of Brahman into the world. Of course, these are realized souls. And the next thing they'd become aware of is, guess what? The Trinity. See, I'm here in the realm of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. See, I salute them. But I'm not stopping here. See, out of that, I will then enter the realm of the Gyanis, the Rishis, the Seers, the Saints. And I am entering the mind stream when I do that. At a very high end of the mind stream. I'm beginning to, because my objective is human birth, consciously. So I'm going to project myself through the realm of the Rishis and Saints and Seers into the, and as I do, the mental mind stream gets thicker and thicker and denser, and the vibration comes congealing together until I reach the fetus. And then I have a moment where I have to choose what gender, what country, what set of parents. And all of those things I just passed through, I keep in my causal memory so that I can man myself up, that I can be born consciously. And when I die, I have to do that whole thing in reverse. So projecting the mind stream and dissolving the mind stream, going up and down the amber stairs of birth and death, as Sri Aurobindo put it, is what the avatar is so adept at. Taking on form and sloughing it off as if it were nothing. Because he knows the mind can produce, and does produce, everything. All forms come from the mind, not from God, and not from nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. That's his mantra when he comes down. Nothing doesn't exist. Everything exists. It's just a matter of what am I going to identify with? And can I turn that identification into mere association for a time and then give it up? Can I attach and detach at will? Ram Prasad has a beautiful song around that. He says, when I was born, the midwife cut the umbilical cord just like that in a second. Can I cut the umbilical cord of attachment to my form, to my subtle form, that easily? Will I be able to do that on my own, as easy as the midwife cut the physical umbilical cord? Can I cut the umbilical cord of ignorance, of attachment to these worlds? So there's some pretty profound thinkers out there who are writing songs. Have some pretty powerful lyrics. Sankalpa Diksha, Chakshu Diksha is by a glance or a look. It's a stream of consciousness coming out of the eyes. So if somebody powerful looks at you, then there's an awakening. If someone you love or who loves you looks at you, then there's an awakening, you see. And that's happening through this. It's a kind of Chakshu Diksha. As I said, you know, somebody looks at you, you feel that. Vak Diksha is by a word, Sparsha Diksha by a touch to the heart or the body. We talked about that. Dhyan Diksha is through meditation. Mantra Diksha, I mentioned early on, by formal initiation in which you get the bijam, the seed word of Saraswati, or the goddess of wisdom. Swapna Diksha is in a dream, Shaktipat Diksha is the transferring of subtle power. Ramakrishna pretty much reserved that for the end of his life, and he transmitted most of his power to his direct disciples. But he wasn't messing around with it other than that. Pada Diksha, by touching the Guru's feet. All forms of Diksha. As instance in the song we often sing. Mono Boli Bhajakali Icha Hoy Torjaya Chari Guru Data Moha Mantra Divani Shi Japa Kori Mono Boli Bhajakali. The Guru transmitted me a secret mantra in sacred ritual. And therefore I realized Mother Kali through her mantra. Gave Mono Boli Bhajakali. Mono mind, Kali the ideal that I think about, Bhaja my devotion to that. Ichahoy toward Jayachari. Guru Data Moha Mantra. The Guru gave me the Maha Mantra, the great mantra, the seed syllable. Divanishi Japa Kori, therefore I did japa of it. And I realized the Divine Mother of the Universe through her name attached to this powerful seed bijam. That's just the first verse of this song. So it starts out right away saying how powerful mantra is. Let's look at these quotes. One at the bottom. The true Guru is nothing less than the cosmic mind, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, manifesting itself in some rare soul. The Guru initiates those sincere spiritual aspirants who are especially keen for realization. I'm very keen for realization, one of my students says. So, nothing less than the cosmic mind, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. That's what we saw when we came out of Brahman, encountered the Word, came out of the Word and saw the Trinity. Because the Trinity each have Om written on their hand, right? So if you're coming this direction, outside in, they're saying, I'm the last form you're going to see. You're going to the Word, brother. Pass by and you dissolve. And if you come back out, I'll see you then, you see. We can compare notes later. But you found the Trinity, the sweetest, most sattvic, most balanced, most beautiful realm that you can possibly go to inside the realms of name and form. There's nothing more beautiful than that. So they sing about it. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Deva Maheshwara, Gurur Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, you're my Guru in human form. I tender my salutations. I proffer my obeisances to you, the Trinity. You get to the Father through the Son. In India, it's you get to the Father through the sons. There are three of them. Dualities perplex, but triputis liberate. So, out of a trash bin, you're getting these teachings. See? From a drawing by an old Vedantist who was long past, and all I had to do was see his work, and it reminded me of all these teachings. What's this last quote up here? This, to strive for enlightenment devoid of Guru Diksha and teachings is like trying to grow crops only at night. Lord Vashishta says, therefore, until thy mind is enlightened, follow the path of initiation shown by the illumined souls. Vivekananda said, you cannot get spirituality from a book or a temple. You can only get it from another soul. So that's how important the teaching is, the teacher is, and the teachings, he says, to the one who is seeking enlightenment. Reminds me of this song. Manre Krishika Janana, Manre Krishika Janana, Iman Mana Jamin Raile Patita, Abad Kale Kana Soma, Manre Krishika Janana. Oh, lazy mind, he says. Clearly, you do not know how to farm. You allow your own fertile expanse to remain fallow. Under proper cultivation, the land of awareness becomes golden with the harvest of illumination. Sow seeds with every breath. Protect the precious field of your soul with the fiery fence of Mother Kali's name, so that the fruit of your dedicated effort will not be stolen by the egocentric world, is what he's saying. But I'm going to read the whole thing to you. It's a very beautiful song. Impenetrable is the fiery fence of Kali, Kali, Kali. This is his mantra. Even death dares not approach it. Be utterly confident, O simple-minded poet. He's talking to his own mind. Encircled by this powerful resonance, your meditations in song will remain fruitful for many hundreds of years. This song is about 300 years old. So, was he right? Did it remain fruitful for many hundred years? The soul is the field of free decision. Dedicate yourself to constant cultivation for the sake of all conscious beings, and the harvest will be without limit. Your spiritual guide has given you the mystic syllable of Mother Essence as potent seed to sow. Water for irrigation flows abundantly through the heart as pure love and tender devotion. This dusty troubadour, wandering through open fields, now pleads with everyone. If you find farming difficult, please bring my poems with you. You need it? You want it? Well, that was translated by our own founder, Lexicon. Beautiful translation. Manre Krishi Kaj Janana. We used to joke about it. That's what we want. We don't want to say, hey man, I'm just a couch banana. I'm Manre Krishi Kaj Janana. Let's not just sit around and be couch potatoes, in other words. Let's get up and be actively engaged in our spiritual life, day to day. As sow seeds with every breath, wisdom, power that your Guru has breathed into you, and water it with the tears of devotion that are flowing through your heart like rivers. That's the kind of spiritual life we want in this mundane world that is so contrary to anything spiritual, is so materialistic oriented. So I think we've run out of time here. We managed to look through the Diksha chart completely, and here at the end assign a few songs to it that we can think about during the break. So here let's take 10 or 15 minutes, during which at the break the live streaming audience can see this chart close up, and we will come back and talk about it in terms of the seer, the seen, the unseen, and the obscene. Thank you for your kind attentions. Aloha and namaste. We are back with our live streaming audience. We here took some prasad, some sanctified food at the break, of all different kinds. Some of us are vegan, some of us are vegetarians, and so we live at the ashram free of meat eating and other practices that are associated with yoga. Not just the yoga of health, but the yoga of mind. And that has to do with this wisdom that we've been speaking about over the last hour and a half, and which we will continue for another hour, and which we meet every Sunday to dive into what Vivekananda said, the Jnana Yoga will get to the root of ignorance quicker than any other yoga. It's the sword stroke that cuts away. And if you can combine it with a background in bhakti and devotion, then all the better. Or if you can use it to go the other direction towards meditation, even better still. If you can bring it all back full circle into karma yoga, then best of all. So he used to say good, better, and best. So the four yogas there for the active temperament, for the contemplative temperament, for the studious temperament, and for the devotional temperament. Very important. And they can act much like the avatar can act, and the Trinity, as we were ending up the last half, can act for you as doorways into the Word, doorways coming back out of the Word, and into the realms that are made of the Word, because the Word is intelligence itself, and intelligence is like sunlight coming off of that world of the Trinity, like a very subtle sunlight that is consisting of rays of wisdom rather than rays of warmth. They have their own inner warmth, and they will destroy the numbness of ignorance. They used to say if you are in a cold Arctic place and you're numb and cold, but you encounter a bonfire all of a sudden, like a forest fire, you stand near it and warm yourself up, and when the numbness goes away, you start to feel those pin prickles, you see. So if you start to feel a little pain when you expose yourself to the fire of knowledge, that's a good thing. And those are the pin prickles of ignorance going away, the numbness of ignorance. And then pretty soon you're going to be basking in the sunlight of that intelligence, and you won't even remember what ignorance was like anymore. One day I awoke and my ignorance was gone, utterly gone, as one of the songs tells us. Who can veil the truth? Who can keep a blazing fire tied in a cotton cloth? Another beautiful song you might want to write down and memorize. So this seer does not even remember what it was like to be ignorant, so has to meditate a little bit on ignorance. Let's see, what was it like to suffer? What was it like to be ignorant? See? And he finds out when he comes down to this world what it's like to be ignorant again. As he finds people in so many different admixtures and combinations of knowledge and ignorance. There are people who are pig ignorant, is the expression I used. There are people who are very intellectual, but they're still ignorant of spiritual things. There are people who are worldly wise. There are people who are all caught up in religious knowledge, which is still, according to Vedanta, called aparavid, lower wisdom. But when you get to paravid, the supreme vid is the word for knowledge. It's also the word for ignorance, avid. When you get to that level of paravid, then you are really in the realm of this sunlight of wisdom, and no greater emanator or sun. You get to the Father through the Son here could also mean S-U-N. You get to the Father through this sun of wisdom that's emanating rays of knowledge, spiritual wisdom, all the time. That's its nature to do so. So you come close to those beings, as we've been talking about in the first half, and your ignorance goes away. In most cases for you, Holy Mother said, it's not going to take a lot of time, because you've already had a good inkling, a good glimpse, or an intuition, as they say, of God being in everyone and in everything. It's something that sensitive people are awake to already. So Ramakrishna said, in the beginning, man is ignorant only interested in the many things around and is distracted by them. Then he finds out, he begins to see that God is in every being. So then all of a sudden he gets knowledge, and his ignorance starts to quit his mind. Then pretty soon he can talk about nothing else but God. We had that quote last week in our class in Pahoa. And so that's a sort of triputi again. The avatar is going to have to meditate on ignorant humanity, going to have to meditate on the seekers, is going to have to meditate on those who have arrived at the goal. He'll make them fishers of men, see, if they've arrived at a high state. And the others he's going to have to deal with on their own level. Avatar means that which descends, so he's going to have to descend into that darkness, as a light in the darkness, as a lamb to the slaughter. And adages like that they use for this great soul who's so sensitive and so superlative, so fully aware of consciousness. Not just his consciousness, because he can't assign it to any individual anymore, even as great as that individual might be, but sees it as this wide open expanse of pure conscious awareness. So that's why the soul is aware of, the soul, it's the avatar soul, is aware of these four divisions. The seer, the seen, the unseen, and the obscene. He says here in this quote, that is Sri Krishna, I transcend what is seen and what is unseen. I am the supreme seer. This multitude of beings manifest themselves and go to the unmanifested state continually, and thereby subject themselves to rebirth in good and evil wombs. They do not know of the eternal existence which never changes and never perishes. But those who perceive it by knowing the unity of the seer, the seen, and the unseen are never born in the gross worlds again. In the Gita, he calls that the path of no return. They take the path, the sunlit path of no return to embodiment again. So their embodiment in the grosser worlds is a thing of the past. It's a dream that they had, and they've awoken from that dream. Now it's only going to be manifestation in Mother Wisdom. One song sings, no more birth in the womb of matter for me, only emanation from my Divine Mother. So Avatar is one of those great rays off of the sun of Brahman that reaches the earth. And therefore, even when it appears in the body, it's not being born in gross matter, because it has no identification with the insentient, see, with the gross, with the obscene. It merely forbears that, because human beings are still holding, as we were saying in the first class, they're still holding that ignorance and preferring to suffer, preferring preferring the darkness to the light. It's really very odd when you see it, but there it is. So a sloka like that out of the Gita shows us, among other things, that if you can pick up a scripture from India, you'll get the straight dope right away. You're not going to have to be an ant and go through all this mixture and admixture of good, bad, and mixed knowledge. They just put it as it is. And they've always done so and continue to do so, even up to the recent time with Swami Vivekananda and Ramana Maharshi and others. They're supremely adept at telling the truth, and usually, unlike myself, more sparse with their words. But the gurus, the acharyas, the teachers, they have a good concourse going on, a good relationship going on with words and flows of wisdom streams. So a way of providing people in this world a path to higher understanding that is, as Vivekananda said, and as I was just saying, the quickest way to destroying your ignorance. Bhakti being the long, slow boat, the scenic route to China, or to India in this case. And meditation also could be very swift, but if it's not based on wisdom, then it could lead you in a bad direction. formless meditation has dangers to it. These chakras also have poisons, as well as nectars. That's how the Upanishads describe the higher centers. The poisons aren't just in the lower centers, but they're very subtle poisons. Like the poison here would be disorientation. If a soul arrives there too quickly after meditating at the heart and and makes a premature jump, as it were, then disorientation can happen. And so there are some very subtle dangers that have to be taken care of by slow progress, from stage to stage. Avastas. The Avatar is a master at teaching avastas. There are instances in Sri Ramakrishna's life, for instance, where people would come to him different levels, and he would always give them the next step of their spiritual evolution. He would say, yes, that's good, you understand that, now think about this. And he was very good at just expertly taking them. It didn't matter if they were ordinary people who were first entering the path or very advanced seekers. He still had the next key for them, and he could lead them on that way. That's called avasta. It's proceeding by stage. The mind gets enlightenment by stages. And that's a statement, a direct quote from Sri Ramachandra, whose birthday was yesterday, Ram Navami, one of the oldest of all avatars on record. So with this quote, we can see the seer. This is really a kind of simplistic overview of the whole thing. This is why I put this chart together. It's in my newest book also that's about to come out, called Dissolving the Mind Stream. I finished it actually 3 or 4 days ago, and we're working on it now too. It's got some 12 to 16 charts in it. This is one of them. And it's toward the end of the book that I put this as a kind of simplistic overview, because there's been a lot of philosophical thinking, deep introspection going on of these kingdoms of heaven within you, so that you know where you're passing, what bardo you're passing from in any given time after your body's demise, or as you're taking on the next body, that you're doing it all consciously. I mean, this is basically what we have to assign, that ability and that talent to the avatars and to the luminaries. They do come in possession of their wisdom. They do have samadhi early. They do live just 32 years, or 38 years in Vivekananda's case, 39 years, and have their realization very early and get right busy to the work. I must be about my father's business. See? Or in Vivekananda's case, my mother's business. He said, you don't understand Mother yet. You have not caught my fire. Mother is my special thing. So this mother path, the path of the goddess, Mother Kali in particular, was what Ramakrishna transmitted to Naren, who was a very pure Advaitist and was not buying into God with form early on. He said, God is in everything. God's in the plate, in the fork, in the cup. What nonsense. See? So Ramakrishna said, just read this book to me. And he gave him the Ashtavakra Samhita. See? And then pretty soon Vivekananda's mind was being prepared. Otherwise he could have just been one of those souls that just was here and gone. See? Here and gone. I've seen everything there is to see here, and I didn't see anything. It's a mirage. I'm leaving. But Ramakrishna had come down. There are songs about that, beautiful songs. Today, along the star-strewn path, the Avatar and his divine companion have descended to earth because the arc of the world is suffering in lust and greed. There's a line right out of a song written by that man on the altar, Swami Shardananda, my teacher's teacher. Beautiful song. Stimita Chit Sindhu Bedi. So from the ocean of consciousness, a divine form was molded. That's Ramakrishna. Like casting 1 billion suns in a mold. That's how he expressed it. So Avatar is like 1 billion suns in a mold. And will project itself down through this cosmic process, through these stations of the kingdoms of heaven within, from the word right on down into the mother's womb, and will come out. When Ramakrishna came out as a baby, the first sign of his spirituality was that he crawled away from the crib into the hearth and got soot all over him. His mother came back in, he was covered with ashes. Who does that remind you of? Lord Shiva covers himself in ashes, you see. So the very first thing he did was roll in ashes when he came to this earth. You can take that in so many ways, from ashes to ashes, dust to dust. As he grew up, he looked back on his childhood and he said, if I had known Kamarpakur was real, Kamarpakur was his village, if I had known that Kamarpakur was real, I would have covered it in gold. But I found out it was unreal, so I renounced it. He was not buying into the world and its appearances whatsoever. And this is a truth knower of the highest order. So, what is it about Christendom that didn't follow the teachings of the renunciate Christ? Not that all householders have to be monks or sannyasins, but the teachings don't change thereby. The teachings are the same for a householder as they are for a monk. They just change in their intensity or in the situation. But the teachings themselves are like gold. So he says, that's why he says, to try and seek enlightenment without knowledge and the guru is like trying to grow crops only at night. It's not going to work very well. Now some of those adages under the category of the seer, Brahman, Atman, Chaitanya, Chaitana. When you hear words like CH words, it's not like CNH sugar in Hawaii. It's a spiritual sugar. Chaitanya means consciousness, and so does Chaitana. The idea is that a consciousness that shines of its own light. Moon doesn't shine by its own light. The sun shines by its own light. So the mind is like the moon, and the sun is like the intelligence, the highest intelligence. Atman. Parabrahma, Mahavishnu, Paramashiva, Mahamaya. The next line I put on purpose because each one of those is a darshana. There's the Vedantists, there's the Shaivites, there's the Vaishnavas, and there's the Shaktas. So that would be their word for the highest existence in each one of those. That is Vaishnavas love Krishna, but beyond Vishnu is Mahavishnu. The Shaivites love Shiva. Beyond Shiva is Paramashiva. We love Mother as Shaktas, but we have to go to the highest Mother, Maha Maya, she who controls, who oversees all the processes in Maya. So those are four very powerful words for the highest expression in each of those darshanas, so that even dualism in India gets a turn towards the non-dual. Not happy just to have knowledge of relativity alone, no matter how high that might take us, but we have to know that ultimate formless essence behind each form. That falls to our predilection. That's what we're given. Names for beings who have those same qualities are next. Videha Mukti, Jivan Mukta, the Maharishis, and Sakshi. Those are beings that Videha Mukti means gains freedom, mukta, from Videha, from Deha, form. So they don't have to come back into form anymore. If you find them here, it'll be a very rare occasion. There'll have to be some reason why they came back, like an avatar convinced them, like Ramakrishna did for Vivekananda. Once you come down to me, the ark of the world is sinking in the ocean of lust and greed. Won't you come down to the world with me? The story is that bright child who was cast like 1,000 suns in a mold tapped the sage on the seer on the shoulder, because he was sitting for 700 years in the state of meditation, in formlessness, perfectly happy, and woke him up out of that and said, come down to earth with me. Come out. Let's manifest all of that knowledge that's in you and save souls. Not just save them, liberate them, as we were talking about early. Jivan Mukta, next to the Videha Mukta, is the living, liberated soul. When you see a soul who has come out, he's living free, like I saw my teacher, a Jivan Mukta. Not bound by anything. He even took the name Ashesha, no residue. It means really freedom from any residue, even cosmic residue. I'm gone and gone forever. Have no hope for me anymore for the world, as another song sings it. I've gone formless, like Buddha. See, Gatam, Gatam, Paragatam. I've gone to the supreme goal beyond all forms. Architect of the universe, I have seen you. I will not build any more houses. Not houses of wood, not houses of stone, not houses of flesh and bone, and not houses of wise conception either. Sankalpa Viksha, right? So if he builds a house of wise conception, he's taking on a great sacrifice for you. And not just for you, but for all of your fellows, giving you a chance to awaken to your Atman, you see, to your divine nature, to your highest consciousness. You have the opportunity to realize that in this lifetime. Sakshi, for instance. You see, Sakshi is witness, so sometimes we sing that verse, it reminds me. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtim Dandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamashadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamarchalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Sakshi Bhutam, the witness of all phenomena. And then Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tanamami. Salute my guru at the end. So I'm the witness of all phenomena. It's a beautiful sloka. Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtam. Brahmanandam, I am the bliss of Brahman. Paramasukadam, I am the supreme happiness. Kevalam, I am alone. Jnanamurtim, I am the very murti of Jnanam. I am the very form of wisdom. What a verse, you see. I mean, you could simplify it all and just say I'm Shiva, but he wants to be a little bit more expressive than that, you see. He wants to leave no doubts as to where he's coming from when he put that sloka together for you. So we sing that right after Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, and so forth. Right after the Guru Stotram, you put that in there. You see, my teacher used to chant that all the time before his lectures. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamashadi Laksham. His arms folded, you see. 80, 90 years old, standing there, giving you Chakshadikshu. Transmitting it to you from his own realization. Yeah, it impressed us. It got deeply into us. Then names for that state: Samadhi, Nirvana, Moksha, Mukti, Turiya. That's all the seers' province, you see. There are many, many other items you could add to that list. But that's enough just to give you a sort of taste of what the seer is like. I think we already looked at that chart. What's it called? Constitution of the Luminary. It's called Constitution of the Luminary. You see, out of the Upanishad, one of the minor Upanishads is a list of everything the seer is. Beautiful, really beautiful. Let's look at the scene. Ether, air, fire, water, earth, electricity, motion, rotation, gravitation, humans, animals, insects, microorganisms, oceans, forests, rivers, plants, flowers. You can look, even some of those are unseen to the naked eye. But they're pretty much the building blocks of the physical universe. But this is what the seer has come out of the seer, you see. We say nature has come out of the mind. Your mind, therefore, has the power of solidity in it, so it can formulate atoms into apparently solid objects, because all of these objects are made of atoms, right? Molecules and so forth. But that's only for the scientists, you see. What the seer knows is that they're made of intelligence. Intelligent particles. Most people don't see the intelligent particle behind the physical particle. That's what gives it its Brahman, which makes it not a tree but a Buddha nature tree, or an Atman tree. That's how they see Brahman in everything, because they're looking and they're seeing the whole process in one glimpse. Whatever they see is Brahman, because they're seeing right to the source immediately, in the very instant. That's how quick that fast that mind is, you see. The scene we know all too well. Let's just awaken to our seerhood. Now there under the unseen is the more perplexing. See, Ishvara, Devas, celestials, ancestors, the disembodied souls. Om, cosmic mind, cosmic laws, subtle elements, intelligent thought, mind, ego, prana, gunas. Even I added in there, although it really could be called a part of the scene, atomic particles, quarks, neutrons, and subatomic particles, as if they were a doorway into prana, and that prana was then a doorway into your ancestors. So this ether of akasha, this akasha of one of the words there, you see ether or space, has a subtle doorway out of the physical into the next level of particle. That's what we're not seeing, because we won't be able to see it with these eyes and with these ears. Nobody has ever seen God with these eyes. Nobody has ever seen the prana. You can't even really see electricity until you get busy with some experiments and make it manifest. So you have to bring the hidden out from the seen, you see. And you'll find out that the unseen is lying all behind all that, like Ishvara, you see. They sing beautiful songs to Ishvara, like Madhusudana, Om Janardana, Om Rishikesha, Madhusudana, Shri Krishna, Madhusudana, Govinda, Madhusudana, Shri Krishna, Madhusudana, Madhava, Madhusudana, Keshava, Madhusudana, Om Janardana, Om Rishikesha, Om Shri Krishna, Madhusudana, Madhava, Madhusudana, Keshava, Madhusudana, Govinda. Name after name rolling out, you see, for this divine being called Ishvara, out of which the avatars have come. That's the sons and daughters, Ishvara or Ishvari. Meaning, you have a great soul like Holy Mother, and you take her as your ideal, like I did. My teacher asked you, what's your ideal? I said, Divine Mother. So he gave me the mantra to Shisharda. And at that moment he gave it to me, I was enlightened. I was awakened. My mind just had to catch up to the fact. It takes you maybe 5, 10, 20 years. But once you get that mantra, which is why these teachings of Diksha and the teachings of the Jnana wisdom go together. They're wrapped up in each other. Well, I mean, you can look at it in terms of philosophy, you can look at it in terms of relationships with the divine, or you can look at it in terms of deities. Madhusudana Govindam. You can go on singing these divine names, like right in the next page. Vasudeva Sarvam, Vasudeva Sarvam, Ekameva Dvaitayam, Vasudeva Sarvam, Vasudeva Sarvam, Vasudeva Sarvam, Suridam Sarva Bhutanam, Vasudeva Sarvam. Sarva means everything. God is everything to me. There's nothing outside of that pale. See? Everything is there. Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. Bhutas, you see. is the witness of all Bhutas, of all beings. Whether they be disembodied, you see, or whether they be the ancestors, the celestials, the devas, that's the grand overseer or overseeress of all living beings at all levels of existence. Goes on, Atmani Vishva Darshanam has darshan of the Atman. The seer sees his divine nature as easy as you would see a fruit in the palm of your hand. Manmai Mam Pashrita. Allows for refuge. The Ishvara form will allow refuge in it. Whether it be Ishvara or Ishvara, you can take refuge in it. So, also, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, all lokas, all worlds, Sarvaloka is the Maheshwara. So Maheshwara is a name for Shiva, who's overseeing all beings. So they throw these names at you, one after the other, you see, and the ideas that go with them, as if to drown your mind in the deluge of divinity. You stagger, your ego staggers, loses its grip, you see. And you have samadhi. That's about the only thing you can't control. Besides the phenomena of this earth, we think we can control it. But that samadhi is definitely not something under your control. It happens by Mother's grace. So, if you look at the realm of the unseen, you're going to have to man yourself up with philosophy, with songs, with these divine ideas, and embrace them, take them in. Because, as I said, the cross-section of unseen is infinite. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamadachite. There's no doubt that the finite is infinite because there's infinite trees and infinite waters and infinite leaves and infinite sky and clouds. But even more infinite is this unseen land within you, these various akashas or these various strata of kingdoms of heaven within you. That's infinite and full of Brahman. After saying and singing that, I hardly don't even want to introduce the last cross section to you, but it came up in satsang today, and we had to deal with it. Violence, war, the power of domination, I'd say, well, let's go on. Genocide, rebirth, selfishness, hatred, deceit, insincerity, ignorance, egotism, delusion, vanity, weakness, worldliness, body attachment, superficiality. These are some of the facets of the unseen. And what I was about to say was probably domination would be the name of this insanity today. The will or the desire to dominate over others. It's actually an occult power. And so Vivekananda has said, oh, when will man become friend to man? We're waiting for that to happen and give up this craziness, this desire to dominate over other people, to hold control over others, and instead, turn toward the infinite, turn towards freedom, and then help others do the same. That's the opposite trend of domination, is to head towards freedom and to free people rather than dominate and hold them down. So that is very human at this point. War is less of a problem. You're not going to get rid of it. But this desire to dominate, you will get rid of if you want to get freedom for yourself and for others. Sometimes it's even the case that war frees people from being warriors. There's the story of the old warrior who nobody could defeat on the battlefield. Nobody could get to him. It was just too much prowess. One day, in the midst of a battle, he just dropped his sword walked up to the top of the hill and sat down. He had lost his desire to be a warrior anymore, and all he wanted to do was observe. Mild interest in who wins, you see. Oh, they won. Oh, now they won. I was going to say that beautiful story of Ramakrishna where everyone starts out on a track and starts running. And you look and there's one person who's way out in front of the rest, the best runner. And you talk to your friend for a minute or so, you look back and that guy's gone so far around that he's now behind everyone else. He looked like he was fastest of all, but he's run so fast he's caught up with everyone else, and now he looks like he's behind everyone else. So that's the spiritual journey Sri Ramakrishna is describing. You can't measure your progress at all because you're basically just running around in circles. It's called Maya. You're going nowhere faster. You're spinning your wheels. The only way to win the race is to stop. You might have figured that out by now. So, cease and be still. We talk about bijams and mantras last half. There's one that she uses very rarely, called hum, H-U-M, hum. If she breathes that on the battlefield, everything freezes. Flesh and bone bodies dissolve. And there's no more battle anymore. She wants to bring it. She gets tired of the constant conflagration. She gets tired of battling with egos all the time. There are powerful songs written about it. The evils have, fingernails long like winnowing hooks, and horrible faces with fangs, and they're coming at her to try and destroy her on the battlefield. She dispatches them all. You see, but pretty soon she tires of that battle. This is the Mahamaya we're talking about, right? Pretty soon she dispatches them all and she's tired of it. So she wants everything to stop because the ego is constantly throwing up more forms of itself. Then she just goes, hum, and she holds out her Abhaya mudra. Cease and be still means everything stops. So really the symbology is that if the meditator can say that to his mind, somebody said at the break, I'm having a hard time concentrating, and I hear noises or my mind wanders and so forth. Common, one of the four impediments of meditation. There are four of them, major ones, and that's one of them. So that kind of distraction. So cease and be still. Whole mind, cease your constant talking, your constant. You're acting like a young teenage girl, with her makeup. You see, talking all the time on the phone with your friends. You see, just cease and be still, be quiet. One father told me a couple of weeks ago, had me laughing. He said, my daughter came up to me and said, I'm having a hard time meditating, I can't concentrate. So he told her, well, you concentrated perfectly for 30 minutes in the bathroom blow drying your hair 2 hours ago. Why don't you use that same power of concentration in your meditation? You see? Blow dry your subtle hair. Do a puja inside, So, cease and be still. Hum. It's a dissolution bijam. Don't use it very much. Let's look here. As we trace the trail of the avatar, those illumined souls who teach the path of no return, yet they themselves show how it's possible to return in the highest state of awareness. And I'll show you at the same time, I think, this teaching that we should also look at. We do have one more class next week on this very subject, Advaita, the Avatars. We finally decided that since there's only one more class before the San Francisco classes and the Portland, Oregon classes, that this week and next week will be in Hawaii will be given to this subject. And there's a lot that can be expressed about it, so no dearth of material. Well, we move into the precincts of Shankara here when you look at a chart like this. There he is riding on the tiger. He's tamed all animal passions, if you want to put it that way, the symbology of that. There's one of his quotes at the top. For those who are suffering very much from the effect of the heat of the sun's rays on the road of this world, wandering the desert of samsara in expectation of water, world-weary, the scripture Vivekachudamani is the nearest ocean of nectar, which reveals the presence of the non-dual Brahman. May the instruction of Shankara, the incarnation of Shiva, which is the way to the bliss of nirvana, be successful. So, some slokas at the very end of the Vivekachudamani, these non-dual scriptures that we've studied and that I'm constantly advising for you to read, really easy reads. And if you want to study them with a teacher, you can get down deep in them and really chop them up and cut them up and look at them in different angles, a little bit like we do here in these classes. But usually the Indian scriptures are quite an easy read. They're not hard to understand. There are some abstruse ideals, ideas rather, but they've been put in such fluent English by some very akamai, Hawaiian word, in the know kinds of contemporary Indian rishis, maharishis, that they're pretty easy to understand. The Upanishad, some of them can be read inside of 10 minutes. You can read an Upanishad. So it's not something that, if you just want to read it and get a flavor for it, an idea, that's going to take you very long. Yes, if you pick up the Gita, then you can get condensed versions of that, which you could probably read in a couple days, even a few hours if you read it from cover to cover. But there are versions of it that have many commentaries on each shloka too. So we've even put out a CD series, which you can study the Gita with the CDs. Did you ever finish that? That's what you start into a Gita with the CDs and you work through it. So this Vivekachudamani, the word is a long one, but Chudamani means crest jewel, and Viveka means discrimination between what's real and what's unreal. So he's wearing this discrimination, Viveka, like a crest jewel. And it's his most famous scripture. Shankara is called Amsa Avatar because he was an incarnation of Shiva and considered that. And he also wrote scriptures. That's a very strange, a very rare combination. I mean, avatars don't usually write scriptures. They come and they introduce the scriptures to people, or discourse on the scriptures, or epitomize the scriptures. They're like walking Bibles, walking Quran, walking Vedas. So to have one come and to actually compose scriptures for you, and this was in 700 AD or so, you see, 1,200 years after Buddha and 700 years after Christ, and maybe 500 or 600 years after the father of yoga. So very well placed in that whole scheme of avatars that come about every 500 or 600 years, they say. Great, great souls, steamliners across that ocean of consciousness that carry many, many, many souls to liberation and others to salvation if that's all they can manage. So Shankara being one of them, that Vivekachudamani is one of the most powerful of all his scriptures. I think it took us 2 years to study it when we were going through it, maybe 3 or 4, sorry. Did it take us that long? So 3 or 4 years to go through the whole thing as a study when we did it a few years back. Well, this really is to say, what is a great soul like that like? The question there in the upper left-hand corner, what does he eat? What comes naturally, free of anxiety? Where does he sleep? On the ground, in a forest, in a castle, or in a hut, it matters not. Vivekananda, I don't think he was calling himself that then. He was probably calling himself Satchidananda. He was still in India. The master had passed away. And he was this young, glowing sannyasin that was making a huge impression on people, but he just wandered the whole breadth of India. And sometimes the Maharajas would hear about him near the castle and they'd send for him. So some nights he'd be sleeping in a castle, and other nights he'd be sleeping in a hut of a villager, and other nights he'd be sleeping out in the wilds, with wild animals and so forth. And sometimes he'd be eating sumptuous foods on gold plates, and other nights he'd be eating, a few little grains of rice and banana off of a banana leaf, you see, or sometimes a cucumber someone gave him saved his life once. He hadn't eaten for 3 or 4 days, and a villager gave him a cucumber. It was actually a Muslim gave him a cucumber. So, what does he eat? Whatever comes, without anxiety. And where does he sleep? Whatever presents itself. What does he drink? The nectar of truth from the Guru. Now, if you're talking about Shankara's Guru, oh my God, you see, and his Guru. See, his Guru was Govindapada, and Govindapada was supposed to be a direct incarnation of the father of yoga, Patanjali, who had lived 500 or 600 years earlier. So he had come back to teach Shankara, you see, into the form. Beautiful story about that, how Shankara found him in a mountain cave that had an avalanche, and he had to clear the avalanche to go in, and found Govindapada had been sitting there for weeks and weeks in samadhi and was about to expire. And he brought him out of samadhi and so that he could teach him certain things. Well, that's the nectar of truth from the Guru. But what about Shankara's Guru's Guru? Gaudapada. If you say Gaudapada in India, it's like immediate hand salute, because he was the one that wrote the famous Karika that affected East and West alike. It was the commentary on the Mundaka Upanishad that's all about Om, the word. And famous commentary, Karika it's called. You'll find it sometimes included with the Mundaka Upanishad, which is one of those easy scriptures to read. It's a very short scripture. But the commentary on it goes very deep and very profound. So that's the line of gurus you're talking about when you talk about Shankara. His guru and his guru's guru were supremely enlightened, both of them. He is without a companion, but loving the self in everyone. He is sometimes expressive, sometimes quiet. Sometimes a wise one, sometimes acts like a fool. Sometimes learned, sometimes illiterate. Sometimes respected, sometimes unknown. Full of power, but seemingly helpless. Non-violent, that is. Shunning enjoyment, but ever contented. Not like other beings, yet seeing equality in everyone. Engaged in action, yet doing nothing. Seemingly finite, but all-pervasive. Temporarily in the body, but not identifying with it. Some of the ways they use to explain a great being. Does he walk? Yes, the path of Vedanta. Does he sport? Yes, his sport is Brahman. His sport is expressing Brahman. He himself said, in a ditch, in a river, in a churchyard, or in a field, wherever the leaf may fall, what does that matter to the tree? Like the destruction of a leaf, a flower, or a fruit is the destruction of the body's senses, vital forces, mind, intellect, and all else to the wise seer, but not of the Atman, of that one who stays always in ever blissful state. He remains always like the tree, not like its leaves. Oh, you can see where he's coming from. Here's another quote from him. The stone, tree, grass, paddy, husk, etc., when burnt, become one form, ashes. Just so, the body, senses, vital forces, mind, and other appearances, upon being consumed in the fire of knowledge, become Brahman. One person, my own student, came up to me once and said, Shankara is too ascetic for me. I have a bone to pick with him. I said, you're going to have a whole skeleton to pick if you go into him. He's got you. He's got you. He knows what's going on. So again, for those who are suffering very much from the effect of the heat of the sun's rays on the road of this world, wandering in the desert of samsara in expectation of some water, world-weary, this scripture is the nearest ocean of nectar, which reveals the presence of the non-dual Brahman. It reminds me, for instance, of this song that we sometimes sing. In fact, this song was the very first song that Narendra, Swami Vivekananda, ever sang to Sri Ramakrishna when they first met in that lifetime. It's another song that you may want to write down and learn. That's not it. it says, "O mind, return to your own abode, your eternal home." And it goes, Mono chalo nija niketane, Mono chalo nija niketane, Shamshara videshe, videshe imagine the young Narendra, a teenager, meeting Sri Ramakrishna for the first time. "I hear you sing." "Yes." "I hear you have a good voice. Will you sing us a song?" First words he sang to Sri Ramakrishna, "O mind, return to your own abode, your eternal home." Because he was coming back to Sri Ramakrishna, which is his eternal home. The Avatar Ishvara is our home in relativity. And if you don't have that home, then relativity is your home itself. So he sings samsara videsha, videshere veshe. So samsara means rounds of birth and death in relativity, in repetitious rounds of suffering and pleasure. World weariness is how he put it here, right? Those who are suffering on the path of life. Well, this song goes on to sing, "O mind, set yourself to the path of truth and walk every moment, lighting your way with the lamp of devotion. Secretly and with great effort, keep the riches of your good deeds with you for sustenance and provision. Greed and delusion are the highway robbers along the path of life. They rob all travelers of their belongings. With great care, keep the two sentries, Sama and Dhamma, to watch over you." Samo Dhammo, these things we see. Sama is inner peace, Dhamma is self-control. So those are your two sentries against this two robbers on the road of life. So it takes the whole spiritual journey and puts it in a beautiful song. Adyodhanath Prakrashi, this beautiful Bengali man who wrote this, lover of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So, O mind, return to your own abode. Now, in the time remaining, we can see what that abode consists of by inspecting this other chart I have up for you here on your left. The 6 treasures and the 6 divine powers of God. Now I was going to show it in accord also with this chart, because here you see side by side the 8 occult powers which you want to avoid here, and then the great 8 accomplishments here. And then here are the 6 treasures of Godhood, of divine powers of God, which are here and here. 6 treasures. So this is a sort of composite chart. This is a more specific teaching on the actual teachings. Vedavyas, the father of Vedanta, nice to have a quote by him. He says, "As the web comes out of a spider and sparks come out of a fire, so this whole universe proceeds from the beloved goddess, the primal force of existence. We salute her, the Mahashakti, within whose Mayic power this whole universe, moving and unmoving, is projected, sustained, and withdrawn." Sankalpa. Dissolving the mind stream and projecting the mind stream. All under her auspice. That would be Sankalpa Diksha. That would be the power of an avatar to project itself into the stream of the mind of collective humanity and ancestors and all. It will come down for that purpose. Now you see underneath that quote some of the beauty reflected. Sri, the word actually Sri is a name for Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance. So here, when we say Sri, we say unlimited abundance. They say, if you're the son of a king, you don't ever want for anything. Or if you become dedicated to the avatar, especially of your particular age, but any age too will do if your devotion is sincere, that unlimited abundance will come to you, yet you won't own a thing. Bala is there, magnificent glory. Aishvarya, irresistible strength, yet you're non-violent. So that's why it's good to put that chart right after a chart like this, because it shows you these apparent dichotomies. Seems completely helpless, that's because he's non-violent, but he's got irresistible strength in him because he's overcome Maya. How many can do that? What inner strength it takes to overcome Maya, which is sort of like fighting a fog bank, you see, with your fists. Vijnana is the fourth, has got penetrating wisdom. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Agyanis don't know that there's fire and wood. Gyanis know there's fire and wood but can't get it out. Vijnanis know there's fire and wood, can get it out, cook food, and feed you. So if you have Vijnana, that's a triputi, that's a backdoor out, that duality of knowledge and ignorance. This is supreme wisdom. So Vijnana is how they describe Sri Ramakrishna. He was a great Vijnani. Tyaga is there. He was a renunciation, but natural renunciation. Sort of like the crown of thorns that Christ wore, you see. Renouncing the world and all that. So in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, just supremely natural. Tejas, awesome splendor. We found out that there was a person named Tejas watching today, one of my students. He has a good name. That is this shining splendor of inner awareness. Just bring it out. Let it shine, as they say. The 6 treasures, an easy read, but it gives us an idea of the qualities of a transcendent being like that when it does come into form. That's what you'll see. If you don't see it right then, open your eyes. It will become apparent to you. Below, the 6 divine powers of God, as contrasted to, say, the 8 occult powers of people who want to dominate. I said that domination is a real problem. So domination here, you can see, would be one of these great occult powers that people warn you away from. They're called the Astabala Siddhas, the 8 powers that are occult in nature. They're tricks of prana, Ramakrishna said. So let's look at the 6 divine powers first. Jivatman, you are one of God's divine powers. I like the teaching very much. The human being is a power of God. You just say, well, it has the power of God in it, but actually the Jivatman itself is a power of God. You're an emanation of God. You're one of the wisdom facets of God. That's why you have intelligence in you. Now, wake up and use it, you see. Hone it. Pierce through Maya with it. That's what it's used for. And then once you're free, live a divine life and help others be free. That's the whole purpose in a nutshell of life. Living life in bondage is not a purpose. Becoming under the auspice of Maya is not a purpose. It's purposeless. So, beautiful, yeah. The Jivatman means the embodied soul. That is one of the powers of God. You are one of the powers of God. Walking around on 2 legs. That's why Vivekananda said, he came to the West, he said, oh, they don't know yet that they're just God walking around on 2 legs. They pray looking up. So I'm going to pray for you, Swamiji. Oh God, please help me. And Swamiji goes, who's he talking to? No one up there. Nothing up there but the 3 elements. At least here there's 5. So they don't know that they're God walking around on 2 legs yet. I mean, this was an absolute truth to him. This was a fact. He'd known this for thousands of years in India. This is the way that they set up their philosophy. There's no other God in the universe except you. Have you seen anyone up there? He said. Get rid of this superstition. Be free. Come out from under that darkness. He used to say, I have a clear light now, free of all hocus pocus. hocus pocus is like gods and angels and devils and other imaginations. You see that the human mind's foisting over the real picture, false superimposition. Strip off those coverings and live in your true self. Live in the awareness, in the divine eye. Manifest that divinity. That's the whole purpose of life. Another power is Jagat. The universe itself is the divine power of God. That's a nice way to look at the universe. I mean, they can tell you, you can look at it as an illusion, that it's unreal, that it's changing all the time, that it's destructive. They can tell you a lot of things about it, and they're all true, but here's an interesting way, the way Avatar would look at it. I think this is the power of God. If he comes down the star-strewn path, as the song says, with his companion, they came along the star-strewn path, it means they're coming from a different ether into the physical ether. They see the stars. They see the universe. Well, that's a beautiful place. That looks like God's manifestation to me. Billions of suns, billions of planets. It's the power of God. That's a good way of looking at the universe. Manas, mind, is also a power of God. The mind itself. And I'd say it's probably much more powerful than the universe, because the universe has come out of the mind. Mind fashioned the universes in space and time. Buddhi, intelligence, a power of God. Prema, love, a power of God. Jnana, knowledge, a power of God. Mind, intelligence, love, and knowledge. Qualities, attributes, forces, divine forces. Let's look at the quote under each one. Jivatman. Sri Ramakrishna says, the jiva, which is the embodied being, at first remains in a state of ignorance, is not conscious of God, but of multiplicity. Then he becomes conscious that God dwells in all beings. If there is any purpose at all to rounds of birth and death, reincarnation, then it's that every time we reincarnate, we live that quote. At first we're ignorant, we think of nothing but multiplicity, but as we grow, we come into knowledge that God dwells in all beings. So if you're not going to be born free, and don't go there, please, then you might as well be born to enact that quote of Sri Ramakrishna. Yes, at first everyone is caught in Maya. No one's an exception. Everyone is stunned by the universe as a power of God. Stars, planets, peoples, varieties. Stunned. Jada Samadhi is called. It's stunned consciousness. You don't know where to go first. You see what to explore next. But if you live long enough, you'll see through it, and then you'll pass away free. And if you come back again after that, you're just wearing a mask, and you're tearing off that mask every time until you get really good at it. When will I tear off my mask in front of humanity? See, that's what the Avatar is doing. He says, now only 1,000 people are watching. I'm not going to do it yet. You see, oh, I've got 100,000 people watching. Here we are. You see, here's me. Here's the light. I am the Avatar of the age. Come here. He hit his own heart. He said, all beings who want to awaken to their own Atman will come here. And he hit his own heart. Sri Ramakrishna. They will come to their heart chakra, or they will come to the Avatar, pretty much the same thing. Let's see the quote under Jagat. This universe is God's glory. You see, that's why I put it together with this 6 treasures. It's God's bala, glory. People see his glory and forget everything else. They do not seek God. This universe has evolved from the Supreme Brahman. Down stations, you see. It started off as the Trinity. Their world is very subtle, but eventually it ended up as the gross worlds, full of suffering, pleasure and pain, playing out there. So this power of the universe, it's a power of God, but it's a power of Mahamaya. It can take you away from the truth, take you away from your divine mission here, your true purpose. Manas, mind, says, regardless of the path one follows, yoga is not possible until the mind is stilled. The mind of a yogi is under his control. He is not under the control of his mind. Beautiful quotes from Sri Ramakrishna. By the way, all taken from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So, quell the mind. It's a nice word in English. I was thinking about it last night. Quell. See? Like stifle a fire. Just quell it. This fire of active mind, restless mind all the time. Just stifle it. Cease and be still. Hum. Whatever you have to do. Still that mind, because you'll never get close to God who is actionless with an active mind. Active mind is fine as a go-to move, but as to know the nature of Brahman is to know actionlessness, stillness, quiet, peace, the peace that passes all understanding. You know what I mean. The quote under intelligence, a man's intelligence is very delicate and can get covered, distorted, or misled. He must therefore practice many austerities so as to acquire divine knowledge. Flint. That's how Sri Ramakrishna called Vivekananda when we first saw him. He's a flint. You can keep a flint in the river for 1,000 years. Take it out, it's still wet. It strikes spark even when wet. He said, most other people are like matches. Keep them in a river, they won't strike. But they do have sulfur in them, so take out the matches, put them in the sun, dry them out, and then they'll strike sparks, you see. Fire is possible in everyone. Atman is in everyone. That flint-like intelligence, which they call pratibha, is in everyone. But you're going to have to hone it. So this is the purport of his quote here. It's very delicate. It can get covered, distorted, and misled. Therefore, practice austerities and do away with that wetness of worldliness and live in a divine state. Strike sparks the minute you come into contact with anything. Burn away all false coverings. Live in the light. The quote under love, prema, we know there are levels of love. Prema is the highest. What is prema? The one who feels it, this intense and ecstatic love for God, not only forgets the world, but also forgets even the body, which is so dear to everyone. So the body becomes less important to you the more you see this divine reality. Often the case is that you forget the body, you also forget its illnesses. If illnesses are there and you begin to concentrate on them, believe in them, then they sometimes increase. So it's not a bad thing to become unconscious of the world, to become conscious of God. That is, give up the body and let it go its own course. Heed then no more how body lives and goes. Its task is done. Let karma float it away. So you become conscious of divine reality and the body just follows suit. That's actually the best way to do things. Like they told me once a few years ago, you have diabetes. And I said, no, I don't. My body does. I told the doctor that. Who's this guy? Get out of my office. But actually he decided to treat me. So. But that's the idea, you see. Don't let anyone tell you you're anything other than the Atman. Divine reality. Parents, professionals, psychologists, my God, therapists. Don't muddle about. Know yourself to be pure and perfect at all times, beyond time, beyond processes like evolution, beyond ideations like 7-day creation theory. Be thee perfect, because you are that. I am that thou art. Tattvam asi, aham brahmasmi. Whatever language you say it in, it has that ring of truth. And finally we have the sixth divine power of God, Jnanam. Knowledge is a divine power of God. The Master says, intelligence, devotion, compassion, renunciation, these belong to the realm of true knowledge. Notice how compassion is listed in there. With these, a man comes near God one more step, and he will attain that. So if you have qualities like compassion, knowledge, renunciation, devotion in you, then you're just a step away from your enlightenment. Just fan the flames of those things, you see. Meditate a little more. Find out about these beings who will encourage you to reach the highest state of your own awareness. It is your awareness, by the way. There's nobody else's. Who else's would it be? Now, next week, because we're running out of time again, we will begin with this chart just to show where we left off, and we'll compare it with the occult powers and also with these teachings on Trividam Dukkam. I would like to put that across from the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, because the three Trividam Dukkam, three kinds of suffering, and the Four Noble Truths are very much alike. One, a gift of Kapila, who was far before Buddha's time, and then Buddha coming along later. Buddha was actually born in Kapilavastu. So he was born in the very township that Kapila lived in when he gave the Trividam Dukkam teaching. So I see a great connection there, even though they're separated by several thousand years. So we will go to that, and that will be the final class on next Sunday, the 28th. And I hope you'll all join us for that in the live streaming. And those of you who are here in Hawaii will attend like you did today. Thank you for your presence and your kind attention. Let's end here then with a Sanskrit chant as is traditional. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Joitir Gamoya Mrityorma Amritam Gamoya Abira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.